Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses Live with Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. It's a lovely sunny morning here in London at the moment. The temperature's warming up nicely today after a bit of a cold start. Hopefully the weather will stay reasonably fine. It looks like we've got some sunny days on the way, even though the mornings are looking a little bit chilly, but that means it's good for riding. Right, so what have we got for you today? Well, actually, there's quite a lot, so I might have to trim something depending on how we're doing on time as we go through. No more smart motorways until radar technology is ready, has been announced by the government. Harrow Council plan to scrap cycle lanes and low traffic neighbourhoods. A Tesla has been involved in a fatal crash with no one in the driving seat. Surrey police are getting acoustic monitors to keep an eye on noisy motorcycles. Vespa have launched their 75th anniversary range. Guy Martin's got his eyes on the 300-mile-per-hour motorcycle land speed record again. And Norton are opening up their Solihull factory. And today's better biking tip, all about optical illusions and motorcycles. So don't forget, if you've got anything that you would like to say, do drop me a line. You can use the comments on the live Facebook post. Any questions, I'll try and answer them. If you've got any feedback on the show, anything you'd like me to cover in a future show, do please ask away. I'll try and get back to you during the show if I can, but certainly at the end of the show. So settle yourself down for the next 25 minutes or so. Right, so first things first, the weather's warming up, so is the training. Now, I've got inquiries and bookings starting to come in on a fairly regular basis, so I do have some dates available still for the next week. I've got Saturday the 24th and Sunday the 25th, both free in the afternoons. Tuesday the 27th is free, Wednesday PM is free, and so is Friday PM. At the moment, Saturday and Sunday next weekend, 1st and 2nd of May, are both available for a booking. So if you're interested in finding out about survival skills, do go and look at my survivalskills.co.uk website, find out a little bit more about what I do, and if it floats your boat, do drop me a line and I'll offer you a course. Right, so what's going on in the news then? Well, first thing to say is that the news emerged yesterday that there will be no more smart motorways built until they have radar technology available to detect stopped vehicles. Now, that was announced by the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, yesterday, and he also said that existing smart motorways are going to have this radar technology retrofitted, and it should be completed by September 2022, which is 6 months earlier than originally promised. Highways England will also upgrade the cameras to spot, then prosecute motorists who ignore the red X signs, drive along closed lanes, thereby creating additional danger, according to the press release. So what are smart motorways? Well, you probably recall they are the ones where the hard shoulder has been converted to an active traffic lane, and it's been seen as a cheap and least disruptive way to add extra capacity to motorways which aren't wide enough to carry all the traffic along them. But what happens when you break down? Well, the aim is that the idea is that you aim for a safety refuge. Unfortunately, on the original trial, the safety refuges were quite close together. On the new stretches of smart motorway, they're often a lot further apart. And as the only way of alerting vehicles to a stopped vehicle actually on the running lanes is the lane closed sign, people actually have to see that. And the problem has been that the control centres have been taking minutes rather than seconds to detect stopped vehicles and switch on the warning signs. In one case, there was a delay of 16 minutes, apparently, and the result has been a number of collisions involving stopped vehicles being hit by stationary cars. Now, it's not only been a problem for broken down vehicles, the police have had problems too. And this was a video that was released a couple of months ago, or a snip from, and what you can see there is the police car in pursuit of a van down the hard shoulder, or what would have been the hard shoulder of a smart motorway. There's basically nowhere to pull up. Now, what happened in this case was the driver was seen driving the van rather erratically, so the police obviously wanted to pull the driver over. The driver then failed to stop, and the police video flagged up the refuge sign there that the driver apparently failed to see, and it was put forward as a sort of irresponsible driver ignoring the police stop. But frankly, I'd say three things about this based on my own driving up and down these things. The first thing to say is that the refuges on the converted smart motorways are actually erratically placed. There's no clear idea of where they are. It's not, it's not a case of as soon as you pass one, it's 1 mile or half a mile or 2 miles to the next one. Sometimes they're sort of within the recommended distances, which I think is about 800 meters. I'd have to double check that. But some are, getting off 2 miles apart, which is a really, really long way if you're having engine trouble or anything else, any other reason you need to stop suddenly. So drivers simply don't know where they are. The other thing I would say is they're often poorly signed. There appear to be 2 signs warning of a refuge ahead, but one thing I've noticed is that they're tall and narrow. Now, what this means, of course, is they're easily hidden behind another vehicle, or tall, wide vehicle. They're quite close to the edge of the highway too. So my experience of those is, again, you can fail to spot one until it's kind of whistling past your left-hand mirror. They're not illuminated, which means they can be difficult to see at night, particularly on a busy motorway, of course, where everybody's running on dipped beam. And that also means they're not so easy to spot in poor driving conditions. The refuges themselves are actually also very short. Now, that means, again, that they can be difficult to see unless you happen to know exactly how far 300 meters is and you're able to judge it. It can be really difficult to actually look from the sign to spot the refuge. The one I looked at the other day when I was driving up the motorway, I barely saw it until I was on top of it, simply because the long grass on the verge concealed it completely from view. And when you do spot it, they're very, very short. Now, if you're trying to get into one of those from 60 or 70 miles an hour and come to a complete standstill, it's not so easy. If you're sort of already braking down and only maybe rolling along at 15 or 20 miles an hour, then okay, not so much of a problem. But actually trying to stop from speed into a refuge which is 100 meters or so long is not a trivial task. Anyway, so that's my views. Not surprisingly, campaigners and families of the victims have dismissed the measures. They said they did not go far enough to ensure driver safety. Labour have also demanded that hard shoulders be reinstated whilst full safety review is undertaken. Unions have also said that there are not enough road traffic officers to deal with the emergencies, even once the vehicles are detected. And the AA have said that the most urgent need is for more of these emergency refuge areas, basically to bring them closer together so drivers do have a better chance of getting off the road. But they also pointed out that with the revised climate emergency targets and home working, they've actually asked whether in fact there is any more need to expand smart motorways, whether traffic will actually be reduced on motorways. Grant Shapps launched an action plan a year ago to improve safety, but as I say, he's not halted the further introduction completely, just put it on hold for the moment. Right, Clive has said good morning. Hello, Clive. Good to have you along for the ride, as it were. So what else is in the news? Well, here in London, Harrow Council are set to tear up their flagship cycle lanes and low traffic neighbourhoods after a review of these green initiatives found that they actually increased traffic jams, caused more pollution, delayed emergency services, and were opposed by large numbers of the local residents that they affected. So Harrow Council is expected to vote in favour of removing them on April the 29th. 3 cycle lanes and 4 low traffic neighbourhood schemes are all set to go. Although there was some support for cycle lanes in terms of encouraging cycling, improving health, basically the delays that they caused have led to increased traffic on these roads, added pollution and delays to journey times. And one of the cycle schemes which is getting the axe is the Honeypot Lane cycle path in Queensbury, which is a fairly short distance from where I actually live here in northwest London. And the support for removing it was absolutely overwhelming. It was over 90% of the people surveyed thought it should be taken out. Now, I drove up the road just as it was going in. It was still coned off. And it basically reduced to 4-lane dual carriageway to 1 lane in each direction. And my immediate observation was that it's actually not a road that many people cycle down. I've driven that road many times, and you don't pass cyclists on it very often. And even after they put the lane in, I think I saw 1 cyclist up and down that bit of road. Similarly, 87% have voted in favour of removing the cycle lane on the Uxbridge Road. And the report concluded the engagement and consultation over the experimental 6-month period have highlighted that a majority do not agree with the design of the cycle lanes and have clearly indicated they're not working for all users. Leader of the council, Paul Osborne, said it's incredibly clear that the majority of people are against these schemes, and it's been clear from the beginning. Even when the residents were against it, the evidence for that was overwhelming. They didn't listen. That was people presumably putting it in place. Low traffic neighbourhoods do create some streets where they don't have much traffic, but all they do is push the traffic onto other roads, which is certainly what's happened in some parts of London. More than 60 miles of cycle lanes have been put in place across London in the last year, encouraging people to walk or cycle during the pandemic. Whilst there has been an increase in traffic in London, likely to be a response to people not using public transport so much during the pandemic, one study claims that delays to drivers have increased by an average of 30% across London boroughs, and that's down to the construction of these cycle lanes. So, fairly damning report there from London. Okay, good morning, Jim. Nice to see you. Don't forget, you are watching Elevenses with Kevin Williams here. And if you want to catch these shows Wednesday and Sunday at 11, you can find me live here on Facebook. You can always catch up on Facebook, or you can head over to my YouTube channel, Survival Skills UK, where all the shows are actually listed. Right, okay, how are we doing for time this morning? Okay, so far. Interesting story, well, tragic story, I suppose, from Texas. A Tesla has crashed. The vehicle was believed to be a 2019 Model S, and the circumstances as described by the police was that it was travelling at high speed when it failed to negotiate a curve. The vehicle then ran off the road, hit a tree, and burst into flames. This was north of Houston in Texas. After the fire was extinguished, the authorities found 2 passengers in the vehicle, one in the front passenger seat and the other in the back seat. So it appears there was no one actually in the driving seat of the vehicle at the time. It was being left to self-drive. The local police are still investigating. Tesla and the National Highway Transport Safety Administration did not respond to a request for a comment by a local TV station. The US Auto Safety Agency said in March that it's actually got 27 open investigations into crashes involving Tesla vehicles, and at least 3 of those crashes occurred recently. Tesla themselves have announced that they're preparing to launch an updated version of this full self-driving software to more customers, and CEO Elon Musk said in January that he expects huge profits from their full self-driving software, saying he's highly confident the car will be able to drive itself with reliability in excess of humans within the year. Well, I suppose if they keep crash testing it on people, they will sort it out eventually, but it is rather alarming, isn't it, I think? Okay, Paul has said he's looked into. Good morning, Paul. He'll catch up later with what he's missed, he says. So, okay. who's from around London, who knows Box Hill, and who knows Riker's Cafe on the A24? I would imagine a fair number of you do. It's a hugely popular biking stopping point. It's always packed at weekends down there, which is one reason I avoid the area like a plague. But there you go. A lot of people like to go where other motorcyclists are. Well, they're not all as unsociable as I am. But there's been a problem, of course, as I've been talking about recently in different stories. There's been a lot of focus on motorcycle noise, which was brought very clearly to the fore during the peace and quiet of lockdown. And motorcycle noise at Box Hill has come under the gaze of David Munro. Gaze, perhaps it should be under the ears of David Munro. Anyway, he's the Surrey Police and Crime Commissioner. And in a statement earlier this week, he said, most people who come here are well behaved, just out for a good time, but there's a minority who sometimes cause trouble. Residents' complaints featuring speeding and loud motorcycle exhausts. Anyway, what he says is that he has now provided funds for acoustic monitors to check decibels. And he said he's also given a general funding uplift to Surrey Police Roads Policing Unit, so they can be out there in greater numbers here and anywhere else in the county that they're needed. Now, it's not entirely clear whether the acoustic monitors are actually the fixed noise cameras that go up in parts of London. Could be. If it is, they are likely to be installed permanently, or at least semi-permanently, or whether they're the kind of handheld noise testers that you would find on a track day, or maybe something completely different. I don't know. But the warning is fairly clear. If you've got a loud can on your bike and you're planning on visiting Box Hill area and Rikers in particular, don't be surprised if you get invited by a nice man in a police uniform to take a noise check over the coming months. Right, okay, so what else has gone in the world? Well, I like to include all kinds of vehicles on these show, and that is a Vespa. And it happens that Friday this week, the 23rd of April, marks the 75th anniversary of the filing of the original patent for the Vespa scooter. So that's 75 years of history where Vespa has, according to the press release, taken the roads of the entire world up a whole new gear. Well, Vespa certainly becomes something of an icon, but it kind of symbolizes, really, I suppose, that period of growth and prosperity in the sort of 60s after the end of the Second World War, where it became an affordable two-wheel transport alternative to the motorcycle. The key point with the scooter was the sort of shiny, easy to clean bodywork, which hid all the nasty mechanical parts out of the way. It was the very antithesis of the sort of motorcycle biker image. Well, it wouldn't be right to celebrate the anniversary without a range of limited edition anniversary models, would it? So, predictably, the special series, the Vespa 75th, have been created. You'll find it in 50, 125 and 150cc Vespa Primavera models, and also the Vespa GTS, which comes in 125 and 300cc formats, will all come out with the anniversary colours, which you can see there. It's described as a metallic yellow, designed to reflect the hue in vogue in the 1940s rather. The colour apparently invokes the heritage, innovative spirit and fashion-loving style of the Vespa. Side panels and the front mudguard are finished with a number 75. You can see it on there on the panel at the back, and the traditional Vespa tie logo is a sort of an opaque, contrasting yellow colour. Anything else? We get a nubuck leather saddle in that smoke grey finish. The wheel rims are painted grey. And you get some chrome plated detail, which don't get on the normal bikes. Instrument cluster surround is chrome, the muffler cover is chrome, the rear view mirrors and the fold away foot pegs on the GTS model as well. You also get a luggage rack there, and you'll see that there is a round bag. It says it replicates the shape of the spare wheel holder. Well, I don't know about that, but anyway, it's a velvety, soft nubuck leather in matching the saddle, and it carries. It's got carry handles and a shoulder strap, and it just clips onto that luggage rack with a quick release mechanism, and it even comes with a waterproof cover. You get a special series identifier which goes behind the leg shield. Rather less traditional, though, is the 4.3-inch TFT color display and a digital instrument cluster with smartphone connectivity on the bigger bikes. And just in case that wasn't enough for you, you also get an elegant Italian jacquard silk scarf with hand-sewn hems, a vintage steel Vespa plate, and a personalised owner's book and 8 collector postcards with images from the 8 decades of the Vespa story there. So desperately worth dashing out for if you're into Vespas. Okay, so what else is going on in the world? I think I'll skip that story because I'm going to be running a little bit short of time. I'll come into that one next time up. Norton is go. The restructured company, which came under the ownership of India's TVS motor company last year, has now officially moved operations to the new factory in Solihull. In the initial phase, the factory will cap its production at 8,000 units per year, but the 75,000 square feet factory is state-of-the-art and has been planned to be enable expansion as and when required. Initially, it seems that Norton are aiming to build the limited run of the Commando Classic that they promised. That will be to honour previous orders and payments that were placed under the previous administration. Right now, there are 110 employees at the site. A new version of the Norton 961's on the cards, and you'll recall that Norton were acquired by TVS in April 2020 after the previous owners went into administration in January that year, when the company collapsed with financing issues and financing irregularities. Right, so let's finish off with the sort of better biking item that I wanted to run. Take a look at this photo. Okay, it's an aeroplane, isn't it? Which way is it going? Have a look at it closely. It appears to be rolling over towards us, turning in our direction. But if you look closely, what you'll see is that the vertical stabilizer is actually on the other side of the plane. And what you're actually looking at is a plane that's turning away from you. And this illusion has been created by the very simple expedient of painting a fake cockpit on the bottom of the plane. We're used to seeing the cockpit on the top of the plane, so we just basically assume as soon as we see that cockpit that the plane, we're looking at the top of the plane. So only when you look a little bit closer and see that vertical stabilizer that you realize, in fact, that the plane's turning away from us. So this was an experimental idea, and the idea was to create confusion in combat. I don't know whether that's been taken up any further, but here's another illusion for you. If you're a Father Ted fan, you probably remember that particular skit with Ted trying to explain the difference between a small cow and a cow that was far away. And that's the key point, really. Things can look small because they are small, or they can look small because they're a long way away. And that particular illusion there should really ring alarm bells for any motorcyclist, because the problem arises that when we put something small next to something big and ask how far away things are, it causes even more confusion in the mind of the person looking at those. So when you, me, driver, any other biker is actually looking in the direction of traffic and waiting to decide whether we can turn through a gap, we all have to estimate what's known as time to arrival. And the result of this calculation, as we work out how long it will take for that oncoming vehicle to reach us, tells us whether or not we have a safe gap to pull out into. Now, obviously, inexperienced drivers leave themselves huge gaps. It's a big problem for new road users to actually work out just how they can get into these gaps. As we get more experience, we start accepting smaller and smaller gaps. But here's the problem. Take a look at this graph. Let's get up on screen again. Now, I've clipped this one out of a TRL presentation, and you'll see what it says. There's judging time to arrival and speed. I'll just zoom in a little bit more. Time to arrival overestimated for small objects. This has implications for motorcyclists approaching junctions. And if you look at the, I'll just zoom in a little bit more. If you look at the logos there, you can see the problem. Cars and vans at the bottom of the graph. Basically, the observer thought they were going to arrive in quite some distance. But they thought that the motorcycle and the large motorcycle, they had more time than they really did. So basically, we underestimate the distance to, sorry, I'll start again. We overestimate the time we have when we're looking at motorcycles. And smaller motorcycles, it's slightly worse than it is for large motorcycles. Now, basically, the problem is that drivers tend to think that the motorcycle is actually further off than it really is. And it's related partly to the relative size of the objects. We tend to think that things that are small are far away. And it's difficult to judge that speed and distance. And there is a connection with the size and shape. For some reason, things that are relatively low but squat, wide in other words, we tend to be better at estimating speed and distance for those than we do for things that are tall and thin. So again, we have a double whammy here. The motorcycle is physically smaller than something like a car or a van, so drivers think it's further away than it is. And they are also fooled by the shape to think it's further away than it is. So the problem is that when drivers look at what they think is a 4-second gap, something that they would judge accurately for a car or van, the error can lead them to be turning into a gap that is less than 2 seconds big when it's a bike approaching them. And this is nothing to do with the motorcycle traveling faster than the other vehicles. This is with a motorcycle traveling at the same speed. So the driver pulls through into the gap and then discovers halfway through the maneuver, of course, that the bike's on top of them. And at that point, panic ensues on both sides. And I wrote about that in Tips on Tuesday yesterday in a little bit more detail if you want to go and read about it. But it turns out that things are even worse at night, when motorcycles are actually even more overrepresented in the collision stats. And again, the rationale is that cars have 2 headlights. You get 2 focus points which expand as the car gets nearer. With a motorcycle, there's only 1, and it's much more difficult to pick up the speed and distance from a single headlight, which is one reason that experiments have been going on with alternative lighting patterns like the tri-light system that I've talked about in Science of Being Seen. Now, okay, just to finish off on that though, but before you think it's carnage out there and that motorcyclists have got no chance of surviving on the roads, do bear this in mind, do the sums. There are around 40 million cars on the road. There are around 1.2 to 1.3 million motorcycles out there on the roads. Those riders are traveling something of the order of 3 billion miles each year. No one, to my knowledge, has ever bothered to count or even estimate the number of junctions where cars are turning, which motorcycles pass and pass totally successfully because the driver sees them and estimates their speed and their arrival time correctly. In fact, there are only around 100 fatal collisions at junctions every year. multiply that roughly by 10 and you get the number of collisions which cause some injury. So you're looking at just over 1,000 collisions in all those millions of junction possible incidents. So the conclusion has to be that despite the problems, most drivers do see most bikes most of the time, and quite significantly outweighs the number of times that drivers don't see motorcycles. But the warning to riders is be on the alert. Make sure that you know that you may not be seen. Okay, so if all that is doing your head in, do think about coming and getting a course with survival skills. On-road training is, of course, now available, but don't forget, I also offer online coaching now as well, and that's inexpensive, and of course, you can take that wherever you are. Nick has said hello. Hi, Nick. Didn't see you there any earlier. Sorry about that. So, all right, that's it for today. Couple of reminders before I sign off. If you want reminders about the live show, apparently what you need to do is click the bell icon on the live video. And if you're watching on a PC, you need to go full screen to see the little bell. And if you're correctly subscribed, the bell will be filled in. Don't forget, Survival Skills offers low cost and even free better biking resources. I try and do something each Elevenses show, which is slightly different. You get the regular posts on Facebook, and if you're not a Facebook fan, don't forget you can subscribe to my email newsletter, which will give you the links to those posts. New tips on Tuesdays and skills on Saturdays Facebook posts are now dual posted and indexed on my coffee.com survival skills page. And for the price of £3, the cost of a coffee, basically, you can open up the full Facebook archive, which goes back to 2014. That's over 400 articles now. And that, of course, helps me keep writing new ones. And then there is the 60-second safety series of videos on the YouTube channel, youtube.com survival skills UK. Don't forget that UK on there. And there are all the back episodes of Elevenses as well, if you want to go back and catch up with previous news. Right, that's it for today. Stay safe out there on the roads, and I'll be back with another episode of Elevenses on Sunday. Look forward to seeing you then. But it's bye for now from Kevin Williams.